Hey everybody, hope this thing is spinning and we're on the air. I see a live thing, but my computer wheel's still spinning a little bit. Give it just a minute. We should be on. I'll start this over with when I see it click. Hey everybody, how's everybody doing tonight? Glad to have you on the show again. I'm not sure how many episodes this makes, but we've done a lot of them. And glad to have you on tonight. We've got a guy who is really the bluegrass guy that has done all this stuff ever and plays bass. And he is the only guy I know of that's in the bluegrass music, the IBMA Hall of Fame 2 times. Once with the Country Gentlemen, the next time as the Seldom scene. And it's just going to be glad and a good night to have Tom Gray on the show. So I'm glad you're tuning in. It's rainy here. It's been nasty all day, and I just got home in time tonight to get going on my show. But I'm thankful for everyone that tunes in here each week to watch us. We're having a lot of fun here. We're getting a lot of good guests on. And I've got a really special one coming in next week that hang around to the end of the show. I'll let you know who it is. But it's a deal. He's a big deal. Ray Collette, hello Phil from Colonial Heights. You're here every week. I'm glad to see you. And my old buddy Barney Rogers, good evening. Looking forward to the show. Barney's here every week too. Barney's a good friend, a great songwriter, and we've got one of Barney's songs on the new, well, I still call it new, but on our new All Stars album. It's one called Ready and Waiting. So glad to see all these people tuning in here tonight for the show. It will be good. And as I mentioned, it's been sloppy here all day, and I've ran errands all day. But anyway, it's been a good day. I actually went running around with my wife today, and she got her first COVID shot. She got the Pfizer, and I've got all mine. I've had all mine in for a while, and I just, I I'm glad she got her first one, did good with it, and I'll be more happy when she gets her second one in, and about a week behind that. That will be great, and we can kind of hopefully go back to life again. Hey, Matt, that's my boy Matt on there tonight, and he says dobro lessons. He don't need no dobro lessons. You just need to come by and see us when you get a chance. I got something for you. Got you a hat. Speaking of hats, this is the new hat. For you folks that don't know a dobro much, this right here is a spider, and that's inside of a dobro. That's actually the engine along with a cone that makes it work. And being that we're doing a new dobro record, I mentioned we've got 24 players on it, and it's going to be a really good thing. This is the album is going to be called The Masters of Slide. I keep tilting my head to show you that, but uh, I I thought since we're doing this, I've made up a bunch of hats and I'm selling them online. This is one of a kind. These are, and you can go to my website at www.unclephilonline.com/store, and it'll be down at the bottom. Go in there and get you a hat. They've been selling about as fast as Dennis Lakin guitars. I'm saying that because I see Dennis on there. Glad to have you on, Dennis. Ray Graham, Russ Farmer. That's another good buddy of mine. But back to my son again, Matt. Matt's a great dobro. He plays with Deland Bradley now. He's doing my old job and he's doing it a lot better than I did. Great player. And he's going to be on this dobro record too. So glad to have him tune in. And Joseph Hensley, Jeff Smith, always good to have those folks here on. Tell you a little bit about Tom Gray before he calls in. Most of you guys probably know Tom Gray is the bass player with the original Seldom scene on all the records, Act 1, Act 2, Act 3, Old Train, Live at the Cellar Door. But what you may not know is he was also a member of the Country Gentlemen before that. And that's how, why he's in the Hall of Fame two different times. That was called the Classic Country Gentleman with Tom Gray, Eddie Adcock, Charlie Waller, and I'm wanting to think, oh gosh, on bass, I'm wanting to say Bill Yates, possibly on that. Don't get me wrong, but I think that's right. But anyway, Tom's been on a ton of records. I've been real surprised when I went looking at his bio and all the stuff he's been on, and he's been on records with everybody. He's been on records with Emmylou Harris, and he's been on records with the Dillards, and gosh, just a whole bunch more than that. He also played on, like I said, well, I'll say it this way, three of my very favorite records of all time. One was Live at the Cellar Door of the Seldom Scene. The other one was the Mike Aldridge Dobro record, which is just the brown label Tacoma. And then he was on Mike Aldridge Blues and Bluegrass. But I remember also I have to add a couple of more records to that. He was also the bass player on the first Tony Rice album called California Autumn, and also on Ricky Skaggs' first album called That's It. So anyway, that's a little bit to get you up on Tom Gray. He's got a lot of stories he's going to tell us tonight. Guy knows a lot of stuff. He's got a lot of history in music. So he'll be calling us up here in a little bit. I want to say hello, Sandy Belcher. Glad to have you on. Lynn Lawson Skaggs, glad to have you on. I would ask you if you're related to Ricky, but you've got a SC instead of SK in your name. But I'm sure people still ask you that, even though the spelling's that way. But we're glad to have all of you guys on tonight. And let's see what all's going on. What all's going on here with me on my end. Not a lot of stuff. Mainly all health stuff. I go to dialysis a couple of days a week, and that's a lot of it. And then I'm, on my time off, I'm working a lot on my play and trying to get it back exactly where I want it, because we're going to be going in with the All Stars in, I believe, probably April to start on a record, or not April, probably May, because our first rehearsals are coming up in April. But probably May, and hopefully we'll have that out before too long. It's going to be on a new label, and I can't really say right now who it is. They'll be bringing it up and letting you know. But I will say that this label also has the new Masters of Rezo album that will be coming out, or Masters of Slide. I keep getting that wrong. I'm going to have to get set on a name or something, but it's Masters of Slide. This label will be doing that one as well. So anyway, that's kind of what's going on with me. Been working, trying to get my chops where I want them, and all that stuff. And this is a good time right now during the pandemic to practice up on your music. So anyway, I'm going to go back over here to the list. My old buddy Stuart Wyrick. I've known Stuart a long time, and we played in the band Flashback together. He's a great banjo player. Flashback used to be, it was me and Richard Bennett and Kurt Chapman and Don Rigsby and J.D. Crow. And when J.D. decided he wanted to retire, we called Stuart Wyrick up. And anyway, I'm no longer in that band, but they're still really hammering it pretty hard. They're recording over at Pine Castle, and I think they've got another CD about ready to come out. So they knock a bunch of them out over there, and old Stuart Wyrick can play that banjo. And if you've seen Flashback, you've probably seen Stuart. So anyway, glad to have everybody on here tonight. My guest next week, I'm not going to tell you his name till the end of the show, but And I got a really big one next week coming in. That's been a buddy of mine for a while. I don't get to see him much. A little clue coming at you. He's from out on the West Coast, and I don't get out that way, and I don't see him at festivals very much. But he was one of the big dogs in this. He still is, and his music kind of goes across a lot of different kinds of music. And if anybody's wanting to pop in and try to guess who it might be over on chat, feel free to do that. And I may tell you if you're right, or I may just kind of grin at you or something. I don't know. But at the end of the show, I will tell you who it is. And seems like we're getting better and better guests coming. I mean, they've all been good, but we just seem to continue to get good guests in. And I don't think we've ever had a bad one. All of our guests have been just really great people. I mean, we've had everybody from actor David Keith to professional wrestler Ricky the Dragon Steamboat. I've had Sean Camp in. I've had J.D. Crowe. I've had Dale Ann Bradley. I've had Bob Minner that works with, here we go again, with Tim Mcgraw. He's been with him like 28 years playing acoustic guitar, just an incredible player. We've had so many good ones on, and I hope I didn't miss anybody. I probably have. I sure didn't mean to if I've missed someone. But anyway, we've had a bunch of good ones on, and they just keep continuing to want to come over and do the show. So be sure in the future to keep watching, because we've got some good ones. Since I don't have a date on these others, but I do on the one I won't tell you about, I can tell you who some of the future guests are that have talked about doing this. I know Claire Lynch is going to be on one night, and me and Marty Rabin from the band Shenandoah, lead singer, sung all the big hits, Church on Cumberland Road, all that stuff. He's going to be on. We're just still trying to find a date on getting him. And we've had a whole bunch of different people that are wanting to be on the show, and I'm really glad about that, because it just kind of shows that things are working good, and I'm trying to get a little bit better with this stuff. I still will tell you I'm not a radio disc jockey. I'm no Howard Stern, none of those. You're probably glad I'm not a Howard Stern, but I'm still learning to do this. So anyway, let's see. Joe Stevens, please don't have. I won't mention who that one is. Amy Saltzgaver, she comes every week. Glad to have you, Amy. Said I met Tim Mcgraw right before he went big at our state fair. Was so cool. Well, if you saw him there at the state fair, Bob Minner played with him. That's how far Bob Minner goes back. And Bob was telling me, it was funny. He said that he come to a rehearsal and Tim Mcgraw was there, and this was before Tim had made it big. And anyway, I know that's our man, but anyway, it was a funny story because how things go, But anyway, this is Tom Gray, I'm sure. Let's see. Hey, Tom, is that you? Hello, Tom? Tom? Let him try again. I know Tom said he'd been having some problems with his phone, so we'll see how this works. But anyway, let's see. Oh yeah, I was talking to Amy about Tim Mcgraw. It's funny. Bob said he got called to rehearsal and went in, and there was Tim, and he was going to be the next big thing. And it was kind of funny because he said Tim was just a regular old guy in there. They were all sitting around jamming, and it's just funny how things work out with stuff. But Bob Minner's been the ultimate sideman to him, and Bob helped write a song called Times Are Tough that's on the new All Stars album that he wrote along with Ronnie Bowman. So he's a great songwriter as well. And anyway, I was glad to have him. He was my very first guest when I started doing these nightly things. And it's always good to have people that are your friends and you want to talk about them. And I'm fortunate. I'm blessed to kind of know a lot about a lot of people here when I bring them in, so it makes it a little bit better. Beth Johnson Rayburn's on tonight. Glad to have you on. And Cody Richardson. Cody's always on. He said, "Hey Phil, hope you're doing well." Yeah, Cody, I'm doing pretty good. Just having a good time doing these things, and we'll see if this is Tom. Well, he dialed once and he hung up. Let's see if he gets through the next time. I will tell you a little in advance. Tom told me that his hearing hasn't been well the last few years. So, we may have to back up on a few things to catch them. But we'll see. We'll see what happens. I believe this might be him. Hello, Tom. Is that you?
Yeah, this is Tom. I pushed my button on my cell phone, and I remembered I had promised you that I was going to call on my house phone because I can get a little better quality there.
Oh yeah, well, buddy, we hear you good. Can you hear me? Okay.
Yes, I hear you just fine.
Oh, buddy, I'm so glad to have you on the show. I've been bragging you up, which everybody knows you, Tom. I mean.
Well, I hope I don't disappoint anyone or embarrass anyone by stories I can tell.
Oh, we're going to let you tell a whole bunch because you sent me some emails today, and I learned so much stuff that I had no idea. It just things that you sent me just kind of I don't know. It was weird because I never knew this stuff, and so I definitely want you to tell people stories tonight, but. We're just glad to have you on, and I guess I want to start off by saying, man, how does a guy from Chicago end up playing bluegrass bass?
Well, okay, just a little biographical info. I was born in Chicago, but when I was 7 years old, my family moved to Washington, D.C., where I grew up. My mom and dad stayed there for the rest of their lives, and I've lived kid listening to this music that sounds like it's been played by old people for other old people, and they're all from down south or maybe living in the mountains, and here I am in the city. Maybe I'm weird.
You was at the right place, buddy. I mean, you hooked up and was there at ground level with so many. I mean, the country gentleman and the Seldom scene. And
yeah, I did.
And let's start a little bit. Tell me, how old were you when you started playing bass, Tom?
I got my first bass fiddle. Oh gosh, it must have been 1956. I was in high school, sophomore in high school. I had already played the guitar and the mandolin, but I was always attracted to the bass. I would listen to the bass line in any music I heard. And when I was listening to my bluegrass records and the radio, I would sit on my bed and play bass runs on a guitar, thinking, hey, wouldn't it be fun if I could get a real bass fiddle and try to do this on a bass? well, eventually I met other people who liked this same kind of music, and I went to parties, jam sessions, and someone did leave a bass in my parents' basement. Well, that's a very well-known bluegrass person right there in East Tennessee, down below you, Tom Morgan.
Oh, yeah, I thought you were going to say Tom. Right.
Yes. Tom was in the Air Force. He was stationed at the Pentagon, had a desk job in the Pentagon. So for years he lived in Tacoma Park, Maryland, and he played music either on his guitar or on a bass, and he worked on instruments, and he got to be one of the best luthiers around. Tom brags that he probably has destroyed more tenor banjos than anyone else in the world. Do you think that could be true?
Well, if not, it needed to be done. So, somebody needed to destroy those things. You gotta have five strings, don't you?
Well, he had all of his bluegrass picking friends who wanted good five-string banjos, and the good vintage master tones were often made back in the 1930s when tenor banjos were more popular.
Right.
So everybody wanted to get one of those tenor banjos and take it to Tom and get him to make a five-string neck for it.
Sure. So
he did.
So that's your bass. Okay.
So Tom left his bass in my parents' basement. So I got to play all those things that had been running through my brain, and I'd been thumping bass runs on my guitar, and then very soon I saved up enough money from my paper route to go buy my first bass fiddle. And I'll tell you a story on myself. I told you I felt a bit weird being a kid growing up in the city, not thinking that other people of my age in the city would listen to this rural kind of music. When I was about 15 years old, I heard that Lester Flatt and Earl Scruggs would be playing in the amusement park ballroom near me. So I went there, stood right down front to get up close and see what they're doing, see their instruments and their faces. And much to my surprise, standing next to me was a boy I had been going to school with for the last 4 years. I looked at him and said, "Monty, what are you doing here?" He looked at me and said, "Tom, what are you doing here?" See, we both had been closet bluegrass people growing up in the city, afraid to say anything about it.
Sure.
But from that point on, we were the best of friends, and we formed a band. We even had a few gigs.
Buddy, that's awesome. And you were about what age when you started playing your gigs?
I started playing gigs when I was 17 with that band that I was in. They were mostly other high school kids like me. I talked my way into playing a one-day gig with Bill Monroe when I was 18. And that is so funny. I can tell a story on that.
Sure.
Every Saturday afternoon, the local country music radio station, WARL, used to host lawn parties where they had live music playing on stage, being broadcast over the air. They had all of the local bluegrass and country artists playing their own segments, plus visiting artists. So I got to know the local people, Buzz Busby and his band, Benny and Valley Kane. The Country Gentlemen, when they first formed in 1957, see, I was still just a 16-year-old listening to them, and I heard the tragic news of Buzz Busby's accident that almost killed him, and members of his band, Bill Emerson, put together a band that was to become the Country Gentlemen. Anyway, I went to this lawn party when the special guest was Bill Monroe and his Bluegrass Boys. Well, Bill Monroe, as others used to do, would pick up a bass player if he didn't have his own to travel with him. There was a local guy there playing bass with Bill Monroe, and he really did a bad job. I watched them play. Unfortunately, somebody I knew from the D.C. music scene, Porter Church, was playing guitar with Bill Monroe. And so I went over to Porter. I said, I know you guys are playing tomorrow at New River Ranch. If Bill wants a real bass player, I'm available. So Porter went and talked to the old man, and Bill said, yes, I'll hire the kid. So I got to play with Bill Monroe when I was 18.
Wow.
And it was such an experience. His old friend Jack Cook.
Yeah, sure.
This was before Jack played with the Stanley brothers, or with Ralph Stanley. Right. Jack had grown up with the Stanleys down in southwestern Virginia, but he had moved to Baltimore, and he led his own band. So he was a good friend of Bill Monroe's. So Jack said to Bill, I want you to meet my fiddle player. I think you will like him. His fiddle player was Billy Baker.
Right.
So Billy auditioned some with Bill Monroe back behind the stage, and sure enough, Bill hired Billy Baker, and he played off and on with Monroe for several years. Okay.
So when did the Country Gentlemen actually, I know they formed, did you say in what, 57?
Yes. It was 4th of July, 1957. Buzz Busby and his band had played a nightclub called the Admiral Grill, and they went out drinking and partying after the gig was over, and riding in the car, going too darn fast. They ran into a telephone pole.
Oh, Lordy.
At high speed. Buzz was riding up front in a shotgun seat, and he got the worst of it, was in a hospital for months. Now, Eddie Adcock had been playing guitar in that band. He was riding in the back seat with the bass player, whose name was Lee Cole. They got injured, but not nearly as bad as the guys in the front seat. So the only member of Buzz's band who did not go out partying, the only adult in the group, was Bill Emerson. So he put together, just to fill up one night in the local club, he called Charlie Water to come play guitar. He called his old high school classmate, John Duffy, to come and play mandolin. So they decided they like the way they sound. They're going to stay together and form a new band. So that was how the Country Gentlemen began.
I had no idea. That's awesome story. Uh,
Uh,
how long did
I
how long was Emerson and Emerson with them before Adcock came in?
Yes. Emerson only stayed about 2 years at that time, but he came back a few years later.
Right, right. And
Uh, After Emerson left the gentleman, he was replaced by Porter Church,
right.
and then by Pete Kuykendall,
Mm-hmm.
who recorded some things with the gentleman,
Right.
and then replaced by Eddie Adcock.
Okay. I didn't know, had no idea about that. I mean, I had the Country Gentleman album that had all the timeline in it. You know what I'm talking about? Was it
Yeah.
50? Not 50 years, but however many. And I was surprised at some of the people that had played even for just sometimes one show, and it the
Yes, but that band did stay together. After Eddie joined them 1959, then I joined the gentleman in 1960. I was 19 years old,
mm-hmm.
and I stayed there 4 years.
Wow.
Eddie stayed there 9 or 10 years. So during that 4 year period when I was in the Country Gentleman, 1960 to 64, it was a very productive time.
Oh yeah.
We recorded 5 or 6 albums.
You remember the names of all of them?
Yeah, country songs, old and new. Oh gosh, there was Country Gentleman on the Road was our live album on Folkways, and then there was the Hootenanny album, and there was Bluegrass at Carnegie Hall.
Wow.
Actually, we were the second bluegrass band to have played at Carnegie Hall.
What was that like, and who was the first bluegrass band?
Oh man, that was such a cool experience. It had such a wonderful reputation as the best acoustic hall. So Eddie and Charlie and I said, we need to test the sound. Okay, Eddie, you go back to that 5th balcony on the top row, and you listen while Charlie drops his guitar pick on stage, and you tell me if you can hear it. Well, the place passed the test. Yeah, he could hear the sound of a little guitar pick falling on the wood floor.
Wow. Well, what was that night like, being there playing and realizing you're at Carnegie Hall?
Oh, it was good. It was a folk music concert. You know, in 1960, 61, 62, if a bluegrass band wanted to make more money, you had to sell yourself as a folk singer.
Oh, yeah.
So this was the Sing Out Magazine's concert that they called Hootenanny. It was hosted by Pete Seeger.
Wow.
There were French Canadian fiddle players, Irish people, several groups of black musicians playing and singing their folk songs. And just as an aside, I'm not going to name any names here, but one of the better known bluegrass bands had been offered that gig. But when they found out that there were black people on the program, they said, no, we don't want to be there.
Wow.
So we were the second choice. So the Country Gentleman got to play Carnegie Hall. That's
awesome. I mean,
one of these days when I see you in person, I'll tell you who that other band was.
Yeah, I'd like to know that. I won't book them. They're probably not playing anymore anyway. So,
Oh,
all right,
oh,
well,
oh.
they may be, but that's an awesome story there, Tom. Now let's move forward just a little bit. Uh,
Yes.
One of my favorite bands ever, and still today is the Seldom Scene.
Oh,
And
bless your heart.
well, I mean that. And I tell you, it's funny how I came across the order, and I'll tell you this of the Seldom Scene. Uh, I first was playing dobro, hadn't been playing one long, and I got a Mike Aldridge album, which you played on the first Tacoma dobro.
I did. Actually, I was one of four bass players on that album.
Was you?
Yes.
Took a lot to make that album.
There were three acoustic players and one or two electric bass players, all on Mike's album.
Well, when I got that album, I wanted to know more about Mike Aldridge, so I wound up going to a local music store record shop and bought Act One, and
Okay.
and it didn't show any of your faces. And I remember looking at that album saying, well, I'd like to know what these guys look like, and I flipped it over, and there you were, and I mean,
Well, that was supposed to be a funny thing. We were supposed to be hiding our faces, thus the name Seldom Seen.
Yep. You know, you guys, that album right there was so good. I still remember everything on it. You guys run on City of New Orleans and
Oh, yeah.
One of a Woman.
We did City of New Orleans before it had become a popular tune. I guess the pop version was by Arlo Guthrie or somebody. You understand this because you're a player. In the way they played it, at the end of every verse, it would go through the flat 7 chord to the 4 chord and back to the 1.
Right.
The way we learned it, we never had a flat 7 chord in that. We played in the key of D, and Mike's dobro intro went straight to a B minor chord.
Okay, right.
So we were playing it differently than most people had learned the popular version of that song. But we stuck with it. We kept playing it the way we always had. And only once did anyone ask me, why did you guys change the chords of that? Well, we didn't change it. We played it the way we learned it.
Right. I love your version, you guys' version of that. And while we're talking about the Seldom Scene, I want to stop just a minute and say that Barbara and Ben Eldridge is tuned in tonight.
Oh, bless their hearts. Yeah, they're sweet people. Oh, yeah. Ben, yeah.
Tell me
much history with Ben.
Tell me a good Ben story. that he won't kill
story.
For. Yeah.
You can blame Ben for starting the Seldom Scene. The band grew out of his weekly jam session. His neighbor was John Starling.
Wow.
Who had been a classmate of Ben's at the University of Virginia in Charlottesville. They got to know each other. They followed bluegrass, and they played some music then, but they kept in touch. And then when both of them graduated from college, they found jobs in the D.C. area.
Sure.
And they both bought a house in the same block in Bethesda, so they could get together again.
Well,
so those two were the core of Ben's weekly jam sessions, and they brought the Aldridge brothers, Mike Aldridge and Dave Aldridge. Now, Dave was the tenor singer. He would sometimes play guitar, he would sometimes play mandolin, but Dave, bless his heart, he's very much like Curly Seckler. His main job was as a singer.
Mm-hmm.
He could play enough guitar or just enough mandolin to fill out what the band needs, but he was there to be the singer.
Mm-hmm.
So he was part of the jamming. There was a fiddle player who came there every week. They had about 4 different bass players, including me, who would sometimes go to those jams. One of those bass players was Lynn Holtzclaw.
Wow, okay.
Who was the country gentleman's
manager, right?
Manager,
mm-hmm.
Right. And a very good friend of John Duffy's. Lynn had this idea, these people play so well, and John Starling is such a great singer.
Mm-hmm.
This may be just what is needed to tempt John Duffy to get back in the music business. See, Duffy had quit the Country Gentleman 2 years earlier.
Mm-hmm.
Out of disappointment with the music business, he didn't even want to perform at all. And people had been trying to get him back on stage. Even Flatt and Scruggs were trying to hire John Duffy, but John turned them down.
Wow.
Well, Lynn Holtzclaw brought John Duffy to one of Ben's jam sessions, and John Duffy had such a good time singing with John Starling. He allowed us how he might be willing to get back into this mm-hmm. music business. And that's how the Seldom scene came to be. But it was sad for poor David Aldridge, who had been the tenor singer in all of those basement jams, because now that John Duffy was in the band,
he's out of a gig.
They didn't need Dave's tenor voice anymore.
Well, I'll tell you, every selection in the Seldom scene was perfect. I don't think without your bass playing, without Ben's banjo playing, John's mandolin and tenor singing, and we know about Mike Aldridge and John Starling. My gosh, just that was a powerful bunch. You guys won everything. I remember when Mule Skinner News used to do the awards. You guys
it did.
You guys knocked everybody out every year. You guys won everything.
Yeah, we did. John Duffy made jokes about Tom won the bass player award and Mike won the dobro player award, but the only award I got was from the state trooper. Which was true. It gave him a speeding ticket on the way home.
Really? So that was true.
but because in those early years of the what's that magazine? The Mule Skinner News. Mm-hmm. The early years of that, Bill Monroe was always voted top mandolin player.
Yeah, sure.
Well, eventually, John Duffy did get that award from Mule Skinner News. So bless his heart, I'm glad he got that.
Well, you guys, I want to tell you my little story here about the Cellar Door album, and then I want you to talk about that.
Sure.
I was young, probably 14, stayed home. Anytime I got a new record, I had a reason to lay out of school to try to learn songs. And I remember laying out like 3 days in a row thinking that album was going to come from county sales, and I would miss a whole day. And I'm not blaming that on you guys, but
you got sick at
the
right time.
Yeah. But gosh, finally that album came, and I would have to say that is one of the albums that, on my very short list, I'm saying counting on one hand, maybe half a hand, that was that inspired me, wanting me to play more. That album from front to back was just awesome, and all the in between talking and stuff was so funny. There was so much comedy in there too that you
Yeah, that album caught John Duffy in his element.
Mhm.
He was always at his best when he was standing in front of a nightclub audience, people drinking, having fun, and he could make jokes and make fun of himself and make fun of each other.
Mhm.
He was in his element. And now let me tell you a John Duffy story that has to do an attitude that John had. John had a lifelong resentment against the Nashville music industry.
Mhm.
It had begun when we were both in Country Gentlemen. We went to Nashville and attended the disc jockey convention. Got to hang around backstage at the Ryman with people. And John was hoping to get some doors opening for the Country Gentlemen, and totally struck out. It's like we were characters from outer space. We didn't belong there.
Mhm.
He resented that and more identified with the college crowds that we played to playing folk music. And then go forward another 8 years or so when finally the Seldom scene started. We were finding success. We were getting packed houses. They were finally starting to be able to add a cover charge on people coming in the door.
Mhm.
Up until that time, people playing in bluegrass bars never had to pay to attend. But we were able to draw enough people who were willing to pay, and John felt we're finally having success at what we do, and we're doing it in playing to what he considered a sophisticated urban and suburban audience.
Mhm.
He said, I don't have to play to those country people in Nashville. Well, some people in Nashville were observing that we were having success and sent a delegation to the Red Fox Club where we were playing, and on with John Duffy and make a proposition. He said, we would like the Seldom scene to come and join the Grand Ole Opry.
Wow.
They said, I don't mean just as a temporary guest, I mean as a permanent member.
Wow, that's big.
And John, after having felt dissed, he had felt disrespected by the country music industry, and he had finally found a way to succeed without them. So John very rudely responded to those Opry people by saying, we don't need you.
Wow.
I mean, this was a very rude thing to say.
Oh, yeah, sure, but
John was
John, wasn't he?
John was John. He had his own business practices, which worked well for him. He had tried that routine of playing in a bus band, a band with a vehicle, and everybody had a bunk in the bus, and you'd travel from gig to gig if you could get enough gigs.
Sure.
He said, this is no fun. he liked being able to be home and sleep in his own bed every night, unless he had a concert to play at some big venue somewhere. And once we had the Seldom scene, we had that opportunity. We could go play big festivals, or we could play an auditorium concert, and we could come home and play at the Birchmere, which is a very nice nightclub that that paid us better than most other bands were making at the time.
Sure.
So when John said to the Opry people, "We don't need you," he went on and said, "Where were you when we did need you?"
What did they say on that?
Understand the way John came from his own experiences of being disrespected by the country music industry, and then finally finding success on his own terms.
Sure. And that's pretty cool when you can, when people ignore you for so long, and then you can tell them, "Hey, we don't need you. We're doing okay." And
that's the way John felt. Now, among the members of the Seldom scene, Mike Aldridge wished we could have been closer to the Nashville industry.
Right.
Of course, he was already getting a lot of studio work, playing his dobro on albums made in Nashville. He did a lot of traveling back and forth.
Sure.
Mike and his wife, Elise, went house hunting in Nashville and tried to convince Duffy to move there. That's where the business is. And Duffy poo-pooed that idea. He said, "We're doing just fine with what we're doing." Anyway.
Well, it's funny how things are. It's like, that call you when we need you kind of stuff sometimes turns around and backfires on people. And, it definitely did. I mean, which the Opry, I'm sure they look at it as like, well, we don't need anybody. But, the Seldom scene would have been a big addition to what they had back then. They didn't have any.
I agree. I think we could have done quite well there, but John had been disrespected by them, and he had no desire to be part of that culture.
J.D. Crowe his turn was a whole lot like that. I mean,
I wondered, now you played with Crowe for a long time.
11 years.
When you were playing with Crowe, did you still have that weekly gig in Lexington?
No, that was done, and I'm glad it was, because I still lived in Knoxville and I didn't want to drive up there every week. But I wound up doing that anyway because we were playing every week, and but sometimes they were coming my way. Sometimes we were going east, and I didn't have to drive so far. But I'm not so sure how much that gig paid, but it was definitely a good learning experience. I mean, that's where Skaggs and Tony Rice and Bobby Sloan, that whole bunch developed, and Keith Whitley too. So.
Oh yeah, I think it gave them a chance to really fine tune their act, their music, their vocals. Everything worked so well when they played because they did it so often.
Right. Well, it makes a big difference when you're doing it every day like that, or every week. But talking about the Cellar Door album, still, when you guys went in and recorded that, was it meant to be an album, or was it just we listened to it and said, "Wow, this is good, we should make a record with it"? What?
Oh yes, it was intended to be an album.
Okay.
We had done some recording at Bias Studios in Springfield, Virginia.
Right.
And their good engineer, Bill McElroy, said, "I could do a live album with you guys and still record it multi-track, just like we do here in the studio, so you can go back and fix your mistakes and remix things. So he had permission from the city to park his sound truck right outside the cellar door and run his cables between the stage and the truck. So he had all of us multi-track on our own channels, so we could go back and fix our mistakes, remix things, which we did. We recorded 2 nights worth of playing at the cellar door and put together that double album out of the best of those 2 nights.
Well, this sure was a great album. And you got a pretty good feature on that one. They cut Grandfather's Clock on that, and you got to play.
Yeah, that was my showpiece.
Mm-hmm. That was a great job on that.
Well, thank you. I had lots of practice, but as I've grown older, I've really dreaded having to play Grandfather's Clock because what I have always done with that tune is take multiple breaks, speeding it up a little bit each time.
Sure.
And I'd get it going so fast, I'd make too many mistakes that I'd make a fool of myself.
You always sounded great on
hey,
that.
I don't mind making a fool of myself if I can show the that I've got the adrenaline to keep going and do so. Hey, let me tell you about that tune. Before we started playing Grandfather's Clock, it used to be the banjo and bass tune that everyone in bluegrass would play was Little Darling Pal of Mine.
Right.
Just like Earl Scruggs and Jake Tulloch played it on stage.
Sure.
Anytime Lester or one of the others in the band would break a string, or maybe even if they didn't break a string, those two would play that. So it got to be when we were playing our barroom gigs, if somebody broke a string, okay, Eddie and I would play Little Darling Pal of Mine. Well, there was about a 2-month period when Eddie had disappeared. We replaced him with Walter Hensley, who was famous for playing in Baltimore and Cincinnati.
Sure.
But we got him to come join the Gentlemen, and Walt said to me, Tom, we don't have to keep playing Little Darling Pal of Mine. You and I should just play Grandfather's Clock. So it was his idea. Walter Hensley brought it to the Country Gentlemen, and I started doing it with Eddie, and then I carried it on over and played it with the Seldom scene.
That's cool. That was that tune right there. I remember on the Cellar Door album what you just said, how it just kept speeding up all the way to the end, and seems like at the first that Ben Aldridge lost a finger pick or something, didn't he?
Yeah, that became a big part of the show. Ben dropped his pick and said, "Oh, I dropped my pick. There goes I lost a quarter." And there's some screaming girl right down front screaming about it all.
Oh yeah, they always seem to be the closest one to the microphones, aren't they?
And you know, years later, a woman came to me and said, that screaming girl in the cellar door was me. She was so proud that was her.
Oh yeah, I know just from things I've been around and been part of, the people would come up and they would say, I was the one that was making this yell out for so-and-so song and kept requesting it and all, and it was like, they were real proud. People were real proud of things like that they got to be on something, But tell me a good story from the cellar door that stands in your mind.
Something that could be said about that, since we've already talked about Grandfather's Clock and about how Ben Eldridge is such a creative, melodic kind of banjo player.
Right.
You folks listen to Grandfather's Clock from that live album, and Ben's last banjo break. It's got the most beautiful, long, flourishing bunch of licks that all fit in a pattern going from up high, winding up down low on his banjo. It's a beautiful thing that Ben came up with.
Is that which song was it on there that Duffy put his hands across Ben's banjo neck when he's getting ready to play Big Chromatic?
That's right. That's when part of Duffy's shtick was to make fun of bluegrass music. And we would do it singing Hit Parade of Love.
Right.
Oh, Jimmy Martin song. And I think it was when we were doing that song on the Cellar album that Ben started to play something chromatic, and Duffy slapped his hand across a banjo neck, and Starling said, "No, that's not the way Porky played it." Because we all have to admire our heroes, and the original Jimmy Martin banjo player was Porky Hutchins back in those days. He had Porky Hutchins and Earl Taylor. That was in the classic Jimmy Martin version of that. So we copied it, but made a joke out of it.
People don't realize, but so much of what you do, if you played everything super serious all the time, it wouldn't be fun. You have to, when you play these songs so many times, sometimes you have to cut up a little bit, and we did that with JD all the time. JD loved doing stuff like that. He would always find something to do. He would come over, walk around the stage during one of our solos and goose us or something like that. And it's just because you play those songs so much every night when you're playing certain places. That's what I liked about the Cellar Door. I always knew your music, Act 1 through 2, but I'd never heard voices, and I wanted to know what I wanted to know what all you guys sounded like, which I didn't get to hear. I think I may have heard your voice on there. I didn't hear Mike Aldridge, but I remember getting to pair up a voice with John Starlin, who still today is one.
I was singing on some of the songs on that album.
Right.
I know I sang a tenor part in The Fields Have Turned Brown.
Right. Oh, that's another great song.
Under Duffy sang a high baritone, right. And so we were both stacked on top of Starling's low lead.
That was a killer song, and
it is
one of my favorites. But yeah, what I was talking about, I guess, is hearing you guys talking voice, hearing John Starlin talk, hearing John Duffy talk. It was good to pair a talking voice with everybody on there and know what they sounded like when, John Starlin would say something to John and John would say something back. It was like, oh, that's what they sound like. That's their voice. And hearing it, in vocals and stuff. I mean, Fields Have Turned Brown, that I remember always liking up-tempo stuff. Growing up, you wanted it real fast or whatever. And I remember the Fields Have Turned Brown, that song right there, I was listening to it, and it kind of just stopped me in my tracks. And I remember I was a kid, but I was getting a little teary-eyed and thinking, wow, this is sad.
You gotta have them. You got to have them both. You got to have some fast, exciting tunes. You have to have some slow ballads.
You do.
Some tunes where you can let your harmonies ring. And the way we did The Fields Have Turned Brown, I think we showed a tremendous respect to the Stanley Brothers by playing it and singing it exactly like they had done back in 1948.
Right. that song was just awesome, and I want to say a couple things, and I want you to tell some stories. I want to just while I'm thinking about it, I mean, I mentioned you were on the California Autumn album, and you were of Tony Rice. You were
Oh
on
yes,
Jerry
that
or Mike Aldridge's first two albums that
yes.
he did, and you was also on a record that I really enjoy a lot. You were on Ricky Skaggs' "That's It," weren't you?
Yes, I was. Yeah. Uh,
So now you talk and tell us some history
um,
about some of that, and then tell us some stories, cause I'm turning it all over to you for a few minutes.
oh gosh, it's hard to think of stories about that. I remember the Tony Rice album. John Starling was producer,
Hmm.
but he did venture out of the control room for one song, which I think was such a beautiful bluegrass thing. John Starling is singing tenor over Tony Rice on oh gosh, what's that Jimmy Martin song?
Uh,
Uh,
I got to get right back.
you don't know my mind.
Yeah, right, right.
And in that song, Ben's Banjo Kickoff is such a classic beauty,
Hmm.
and that selection of notes in such an order, nobody but Ben would have played it that way.
No, it's awesome, awesome, awesome banjo playing on that.
Yeah, it was. And, by that time, I was playing bass in the studio, but I had gotten over my youthful desire to show off all the time.
Mhm.
I wanted to hold back until just such a time that it felt appropriate to maybe play some walking bass and
Hmm.
just a few phrases here and there.
Hmm.
I didn't want to do it all the time.
Right.
Uh, but I found that in some of those arrangements, the only time I could really play a walking bass was behind a fiddle break. Somehow it just seemed to fit
Hmm.
that way. I didn't want to try to overshadow something pretty that Mike is playing on the dobro. I don't want to show off what I can do. By that time, I'd already established, people knew I had enough chops. I didn't need to brag anymore. When I was back in the Gentleman, I played way too much. As a matter of fact, I got fired for playing too many notes. After I had left the Gentleman, I played with some other local bands,
Hmm.
including Bill Emerson and Cliff Waldron band.
Right.
Well, Bill Emerson was trying to get me to back off and not play so darn many notes. But up until that point in life, I'd always been encouraged to do more.
To do all right.
And it took getting fired to finally make this numbskull brain realize not everybody wants to hear all the notes you can play all the time. So I got fired for playing too many notes.
Jay.
Bill taught me a valuable lesson. So after that, I joined Seldom Scene, and I would try to be more judicious as to when I would play runs and when I would not.
Right. Taste is, I guess, the
And
word.
so a lot of people still swear that I played too much anyway, but I try to find notes that show where the music is going.
Sure.
From here to there.
Right.
I want to
Transition notes, I guess, right?
yeah, some transition notes, some punctuation
Right.
at the beginning or ending of a line in a song. I would search for places I can just throw in maybe just one extra note.
Sure.
That's all it needs.
Sure. Well, that's the thing about it. You've always played with good taste. I thought I've listened. Well, everything I've listened to, like Seldom Scene, I've isolated each player and focused on what they're doing and all. And you guys just had the right mix on what you did and how things matched up with everybody. And then you throw it back Aldridge playing the dobro back there, and it's just like, it's the
Well,
threads,
and let me tell the story about how Mike Aldridge became a dobro player. When I met Mike, we were still high school age. He was a banjo player. He was so excited back in the 50s when Flatt and Scruggs finally hired Josh Graves, and they had a dobro in the band.
Mm-hmm.
This is the first time any bluegrass band has had anything other than the original 5 instruments. And there were many of us, myself included, who kind of looked askance at adding this sliding guitar
Mm-hmm.
in there.
Mm-hmm.
And it took a while to realize, hey, that's a pretty addition. I like it.
Mm-hmm.
Mike always wanted to do that because of his uncle, Ellsworth Cousins, Mike's uncle, his mom's brother,
Mm-hmm.
had played slide guitar with Jimmy Rogers on records in the 1920s and 30s, and wrote some songs for Jimmy Rogers. So back in those days, I think the dobro was just being invented. So I think what Ellsworth did was just to hold a guitar horizontally and play it with a bar,
Mm-hmm.
like a Hawaiian guitar.
Sure.
He did that, and Mike said that his uncle would play at their family gatherings with his slide guitar, and by then he did have the dobro later. And so Mike finally realized that it's okay to be a dobro player. So
Yeah.
he found an off-brand Rezo Git in a music store, and then Josh Graves himself lined up Mike with his first dobro brand Rezo guitar.
Wow. Well, a bunch of those old timers, and I don't want to call them old timers because like J.D. Crow's not an old timer. But when I went to join his band, it was funny. He told me a story. He said, I used to not like dobro in a band at
He
all.
did.
Yeah, well, it was funny when I first called him.
But he hired you. Good.
Yeah, it was funny when the conversation went this way. He said, "Now, Phil, I appreciate you calling." Said, "But I don't like dobros very much, or didn't like them." But I thought, oh gosh, and he said his reason was when Josh came into the band that it knocked Earl out of an extra banjo break, and I thought, how many banjo breaks does Earl need to take? Does he need to take 50 to make you happy?
How many?
How many? And
Yeah.
but he said that after Jerry Douglas came in the band, he thought the dobro fit his music really well, and
Yeah.
a dobro does. But tell me some stories about. Tell me a good Ben Eldridge story.
Oh gosh.
Now he's listening, so he'll come over your house.
Bless his heart. Ben is a great player, a great guy. Often he doesn't have a whole lot to say. It's hard to think of stories, but I can tell you a role that Ben had in the Seldom scene, since he was hardly ever singing himself. He was always the vocal critic. Whenever we would start to work up a new tune, Duffy would always have us work it out with the lead in the middle, work it out with the lead on the top, work it out again with the lead on the bottom, see which one sounds best. And he said, Ben, what do you think? So Ben was the critique of that. And now on a few of the tunes that we recorded, Ben did sing baritone or
right.
bass. Yeah, he was famously singing his line on "Lay Down, Sally," in which he would ham it up and talk like the dirty old man trying to give candy to the little girl. that was all part of Ben's stick. Ben is not a dirty old man.
No.
But he would act that way just as part of a joke on stage.
Sure. Well, I've met Ben a long time back, and Ben's always just been such a good guy to me. Good, very kind, such a gentleman. But as I got to know him later, I started to see a little of his comical side, and it was funny,
Okay, I can tell you a very short little comment about Ben and his very talented son, Christopher, that they call Critter.
Oh, yeah.
When Critter was learning to play guitar, he told his dad, "I want the day to come when people just talk about you as Chris Eldridge's dad." And that has happened.
They're doing that now. Yep.
Exactly. Yeah. Critter is very much in demand as a guitar teacher and performer. And Ben is the elder statesman. And another short Ben and Critter story. Not having seen them for a while, last year, right about this time of year, just as the coronavirus was starting to hit, I did have my last festival gig in Florida. And while driving to Florida, I said, I want to leave a day earlier because I want to stop in Fredericksburg. I want to visit Ben. So my wife Barb and I walked into Ben's house, and from the back room, I hear the music of a banjo and a guitar. There's Ben and Critter picking just the two of them in the back room.
That's cool.
That is very cool. That is so sweet.
Well, see, my son now, he's turned into a really great dobro player. He plays with Delane Bradley.
Oh, yeah. He's trying to blow you away.
Oh, well, he already did that. And people, I'm now Matt's dad. So I understand that, what it is. But, I'm sure just like Ben and I am, you're really proud of your kids to see them do that. But
yes.
still at the same time, something goes on in your head a little bit, especially with me when you play the same instruments. It's like, well, am I going to still have a job? Yeah. Ben, I've just always loved his music, and
yes.
He really sound, like I said earlier, they couldn't have picked 5 guys that would have made the Seldom scene any better, I don't think. But now, didn't Skaggs come and play fiddle some with you guys from time to time?
Yes, he did. Frequently on some live shows and frequently on some recordings. Yes. You mentioned Mike Aldridge's Blue album.
Bluegrass.
Yeah. Skaggs was in the studio. He was playing on many of those cuts. And while we were doing Mike's album, we were also recording the other Blue album, which was the Old Train album with Seldom Seen.
That's one of my very favorite albums right there. Pan American, man, that's the real stuff right there. An Old Train, you guys just, that whole album is good, both sides, front to back, I think.
Well, good. And I need to give thanks publicly to John Starling, because in many of those arrangements, he would ask me to come up with some bass lick to be an intro to something like which we did on Rider. I played the intro to that, and I played a similar one in Old Train, but it almost got buried because there was the banjo would go boop boop, the bass would go boom boom, the dobro would boom boom. We would go after each other, and then we all did a lick simultaneously. And so I had another one of those that I did on the Old Train album, and if I need to practice my chops to this day, I'll still practice that intro to Old Train, although I think most people don't even know it's there because there's so much going on at the time. But there is one of those long.
That's a very cool bass line right there when the music starts on Old Train. I think that you play.
Well, thank you. That's what I'm talking about. Yeah, I did put a line there.
Yeah, it's really good because you go from that high down to the low, and it just sounds really good. But
yeah, I did.
There was some good bass playing on that album, Tom. I mean, you did some good work, really good work on that.
Well, thank you very much, Phil.
Let me ask you just a few things. I know you played on, I think it's 13 Seldom Seen albums. Was that right? Or you probably didn't count, but
that sounds about right. I don't have an exact count, but that does seem about right. 13 albums. Yeah.
I do a little research on you guys before we do these, so I don't forget things. And but I think I read that you did 13 with them, and you did 7 with the Country Gentlemen.
Yeah.
And I've been telling everybody all week that you're the only person I know that is in the Bluegrass Music Hall of Fame 2 times with 2 different bands, the Country Gentlemen and the Seldom Seen. I mean, tell me about that. I mean, one time it's going to be enough, but wow.
That was so cool. To get on the Hall of Fame, or Hall of Honor, at first was known as. But now there are more people who are double members, and he deserves more credit than I do. Bobby Osborne.
Right.
He was, of course, in the Hall of Fame as one of the Osborne brothers, and also as Lonesome Pine Fiddlers.
I didn't think about that. Okay.
Yes, he was Lonesome Pine Fiddlers, and so was Paul Williams, who also got in Hall of Fame on his own. So Paul is a double member, and of course Bobby is very much a double member.
So are you guys the only 3?
I guess so. Of course, you and I have both been bragging about Mike Aldridge. Of course, Mike was inducted as a member of the Seldom Scene, but just a year ago, he was also inducted on his own, just as a solo artist.
Right. I got to play the induction ceremony for that, and it was just it was a haunting moment, and I thought afterwards that they should have had you up to play bass on that.
Bless your heart, Phil. When I sat in the audience and watched that, I got depressed. I got very depressed. Watching that, I said, here they're honoring my friend Mike. I've known Mike longer than anybody else in this business.
Oh, yeah.
Going back to when we were teenagers, I've been a bandmate of Mike's in 7 bands, and we made history together by playing Wait a Minute.
Yeah, definitely. I know.
I don't fault what Mark Schatz was up there playing in my place, but damn it, as I sat there watching it, I was thinking, that's my position. I should have been there.
I understand that. Thank
you, Phil.
I was there with three other dobro players: Jerry Douglas, Rob Ikes, Justin Moses, and me.
Yes.
And there was four, so it wasn't such a weird feeling as if I was being one player, and still living. So I understand where you're at with that, because you were available. But
after that, I told you I felt very depressed the rest of that night. And then when they were planning a new event at the Bluegrass Museum in Owensboro honoring the new inductees, I got the call or an email from Chris Jocelyn. He said he wanted me to be there in the hall.
Mm-hmm.
I said, if there's to be a stage thing honoring my dear friend Mike Aldridge, I have to be a part of it, or I don't want to be there.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess you understand this. Maybe most people in this business may not understand it, but to just sit there and watch others take my place.
I understand that. I do, all the way. And but that was kind of, I don't know.
And it would have been enough if they just asked me to get up and say a few words.
Yeah. I ran into you that night. I don't know if it was that night afterwards or if it was the next day. I think it may have been the next day. And
may have been. We after the award show that night, like I told you, I was feeling depressed, and Barb and I just went back to the hotel.
Yeah. Well,
I didn't want to hang out and schmooze.
I understand. I understand that. But when I was up there playing, I was thinking of all you guys that had played there, and thinking of the time when I was buying your music on LPs and being there playing. But I know it's a tribute, but sometimes these tributes with people like with you and Ben and everybody, I mean, it would have just made sense to contact you and say, hey, do you want to do this? I really think that's the way it should be. But I don't do that. I don't do that management stuff,
So I'm wondering if the museum, once this pandemic is totally over, I wonder if there'll be another event to honor people like Mike and Emerson,
right.
And
sure.
and of course the recent inductees, Newgrass Revival,
right.
and Johnson Mountain Boys.
Johnson Mountain Boys, right.
Oh, hey, I made the comment at a gathering of IBMA people that it's high time the Johnson Mountain Boys got in that Hall of Fame.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And the response I got after seeing somebody's eyes roll back in their heads, we need to really get women in there. That perhaps Rhonda or Allison should be the next one in there. Well, yeah, they deserve it too, for sure. But anyway, my hint was taken, and sure enough, Johnson Mountain Boys were on the long list of possible inductees, and they got the votes and they got in.
Yeah, oh yeah, it was great.
I feel I had something to do with helping them getting that recognition.
Well, they definitely need to be there, and that was a good, that's a good move to have them, to have the Newgrass Revival in two versions, and I agree with
Yeah, those people really do deserve the fame. I'm talking about both of those bands,
Yeah,
and
sure.
I'm also talking about the women who are not in there yet.
Yeah, sure. Yet, because
They certainly do deserve it.
they do. Rhonda Vincent. I don't know anybody works any harder than her, and on top of it,
Nobody does.
no, they don't, and she's great. And I watched Rhonda at Bean Blossom when I uh, was booking it before the pandemic in 2019. And most of these bands come in and they want to do one big set. Rhonda wanted to do two because she wanted to have time to spend with her fans because she had to split them up. And Rhonda would always go out there and she would stay till the last one was gone. And
she'd make herself available to the fans, just like Bill Monroe did.
Oh yeah, yeah. And Rhonda never thought that anybody she was talking to was any less than the one that had just left. And and I agree with you. I mean, we both know. I mean, heck, she's a Grand Ole Opry member. She certainly deserves to be in the IBMA Hall of Fame, and it will happen. And
sure, it will.
And and Alison Krauss will be there, and sometime in a lifespan, maybe when I'm gone, because I'm on that upper end, but I start seeing people that maybe not while I'm here, but after I'm gone, I see people like Dale Ann Bradley and Claire Lynch and people like that. Lynn Morris getting to be in the Hall of Fame at some point, and I hope that happens. But I want to get real quick. We've got some questions and some comments I want to read over here, Tom.
Okay. I hope it's okay. We're running a little overtime, but I don't mind if you don't.
No, we always do run overtime here. My longest one, I think I had someone that went 2 hours and something, and I was still enjoying it, and he was too. So.
Okay. I have not been watching comments. I've turned off my device so I can listen to you.
Oh, that's okay.
So you have good questions?
Yeah, let's see a lot of just comments. Tim Ellsbury said that he loved Live at the Cellar Door. And let's see, I got an old buddy on here, John Golden, saying hey. And a guy, Tim Ellsbury, again said every time we sing The Fields That Turn Brown, my mother would cry. That's a good song, And
all right.
And here's let's see, let me count these. Here's 1, 2, 3, 4 pairs of lips, and it says "Thank you, Tom." Ben Eldridge. So he sent you 4 kisses, but Barbara posted it, but it says "Thank you, Tom." Ben. So he sent you 4 kisses. And let's scroll on down here. Oh, Lordy. A buddy of mine I went to school with, a guy named Greg Pruitt. Real good buddy of mine. I didn't know him in high school, but ever since we've got to be buddies. And he said he just listened to the original Grandfather's Clock. Man, what an incredible instrumental. I understand what he meant about the screaming woman. Love that. Fantastic music. And Tim Ellsbury again said Ben Eldridge has long been a banjo hero of his. And Barbara Eldridge, again, she says, hey, Tom and Phil, y'all want a piece of candy? Yep.
Uh-oh.
Is that a joke?
She sounded like a oh gosh, like my hero George Shuffler. If George offers you candy, don't take it.
No, I remember that. George.
No, it's a prank.
Yeah, George was one of my favorites. But yeah, I knew that had to be something with a piece of candy. So
okay, maybe that's why Barbara wants to offer the candy. It's the X-Lax instead.
Yeah, Barb, we don't want none of that. But Tom said he'll take some next week if you'll send it to him.
Yeah.
Let's see. Tim Ellsbury, right on, Tom, about Mike's tribute. Uh, he, he thought y'all would be there playing. And Jesse Jeffrey said, got a question here. Said, was John Duffy easy going off stage?
That's a darn good question. John Duffy was a very complex individual. He was a live wire on stage, but once he got off, he really was a rather shy person, and he didn't want to mingle very much.
Mm-hmm. When did John, what point, what show were you guys at when John broke out the crazy breeches he wore for the rest of his career?
That was after I left the scene. Okay, I left Seldom scene in 1987, and I think John started wearing the funny pants maybe about 1990.
About the time, okay.
Yeah, and for the rest of his life he did.
John, I remember a funny one, Denton one year, and I think it was Dole and JD was backstage and John was back there, and Dole looked over at John. John had a coffee cup in his hand, and he said, "What you drinking?" And he said, "I'm drinking Folgers." And Dole just looked at him and said, "Folgers." And John said, "Don't you see it's in a coffee cup?" And Crow kind of looked at him with a funny look, and Dole went over there and didn't have to get very close, sniffed it, and he started hacking and coughing, and he said, "John, that's pure moonshine or something like that." And John started laughing. I guess did John drink scotch or bourbon or something that was his favorite?
John always wanted to drink something alcoholic before he went on stage. Mm-hmm. It would help him be wild and crazy while on stage. Mm-hmm. Early in his career, he always mixed whiskey sours, which were very good. I enjoyed drinking some of John's whiskey sours. Well, it began to bother his stomach, all that whiskey, so he started making gin sours. And as much as John drank, I've never seen him drunk. I don't think anyone has ever seen John Duffy drunk. He would drink just enough to get an edge on, to be a bit wild and crazy, the persona that he wanted to be on stage. But once he got off stage, that was over, and he really did not want to mingle too much after that.
Do you think that was kind of his way of maybe steering around, maybe I'm not going to say stage fright, but feeling, more comfortable when he was on stage, where he could be at his best?
Yes, it was his crutch to lean on. And he would time his drinking to be just at the proper peak just as we went on stage. And it would make him mad if the act before us on stage took too long, and John would be getting angry, saying, "I'm getting off my peak." And he would tell promoters, "Never put me on after Jimmy Martin. Never put me on after Peter Rowan." Both of those guys would tend to stay on stage longer than their allotted time.
Oh yeah, definitely. I'll tell you what, John, I never got to know him very well, but I always admired him because he was one of my heroes. Just like all you guys.
Yes, I admire John greatly. He was not always the easiest person to get along with, but frankly, my life has been enriched by me being close to John in both of his major bands in this music business.
Well, Tom, tell me real quick here, or you don't have to be real quick, but um, tell me some of the people, just for people out here listening, that you've recorded with outside of, the Seldom scene and stuff.
Um, okay, one that I've recorded with a whole lot, again and again, has been my dear old friend Bill Clifton.
Mm-hmm.
Bill was one of those early bluegrass recording artists. I used to buy all of his records, but once I got to meet him, he would let me play with him on stage and on many of his recordings, including back when I was in Country Gentlemen. Bill used the Country Gentlemen as his band in several albums. And then even after Bill moved overseas, he would come back and record some, and he would usually call on me. There were some great combinations of musicians in the recording studio. Bill Clifton's album titled Come by the Hills. It included Red Rector and John Duffy, both on mandolins.
I don't know
and
if
it had what?
Oh, I was going to say, I don't know if you knew, but Red Rector was he lived just a few miles from me, maybe.
I thought so.
Yeah.
Yeah, he had been very prominent in Knoxville.
Yeah, he was on the Kaz Walker show every morning here, and Red was, Red was just. He was Red. He lived his life, ran around town, did everything.
And he was a funny guy.
Oh, he was. You
hang around him off stage, and he's making jokes. And he played the prettiest combinations of notes on his mandolin.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, Red was. He was probably the first mandolin player I was ever introduced to, because my dad always told me, you got to listen to this guy. And Red played some really good stuff. And like, when I mentioned the Kaz Walker show, Dolly Parton, she kind of started out there. I think the first place she played pretty much on TV was there. So anytime she come through, Red was, they were all part of the band. And it was funny because I got to know Red pretty good, and he would always, if somebody come on, he would have when the show was over, he'd kind of give you a rundown comedy run of what somebody was doing or what somebody was doing wrong, and he was just funny. He could make you laugh at anything.
Yes, he can. Hey, I'll tell you a funny incident. Red was playing with Bill Clifton one night at the Red Fox nightclub. And Bill's old friend, our good friend Paul Kraft, was in the hall, was in the room. And Bill asked Paul if he would want to get up and sing a song or two. So Paul did get up and do that. And so on stage there was Bill and Red and Paul. Paul played some song that he'd recently written that was really very complicated, lots of chords. You wonder how in the world is anybody going to play with him on that. And as he was finishing the chorus in the song, he looked over at Red with that look which says, "You want a break in this?" And Red shook his head, yes. And all the musicians in the room gulped. What in the world is he going to be able to make out of all of that? And Red just stepped up to the microphone and plays the yodel lick. And it was so funny.
That sounds like Red.
It was so funny.
Sounds like Red.
And once he did that, he kind of rubbed his hand on his shirt and said, "You can't stump old Red." Now, doesn't that sound like his humor?
It's exactly Red. I remember one time picking with him, and everybody's sitting there picking, and the solos come up, and they say, "Red, do you want this solo?" He goes, "I'll get the next one." So they go through and play, and he said, "Oh, let the banjo get it back," and goes back, and he says, "Yeah, go ahead, keep playing. I'll get the next one." Well, it comes around to the next one, and about that time, he's taking his mandolin off and going over and getting some coffee, and he looks back and he said, "I'll play the ending." And but he was a funny guy. I love being around Red. I wasn't around him enough, but I was around him enough to know a lot of his humor and
He's I was so glad I got to play with the group they called the First Generation, which was Bill Clifton, Red Rector, and Don Stover.
Mm-hmm.
I did a tour in Europe with them. I did a tour in Japan with Bill and Red.
Wow.
And on that tour, we had Bill Keith playing banjo.
Mm-hmm.
So that was a really unique combination of people.
A different lineup.
So that was a tour of Japan. That was 1976, my first overseas trip. I had to get my first passport to make that trip.
Mm-hmm.
But those were good times with your old neighbor, Red Rector.
Well, I knew you guys had played together, and John, I was going to ask you something about John Duffy, and I called you John. I forgot what I was going to ask you now. I'll think of it. But Tom, it's been really good having you on tonight. I mean, me and you, basically what we've had to talk is kind of getting pushed by each other at the IBMA during Music Week. We don't get to talk much, and we've got to talk.
Yeah. Maybe we can do that this year. Maybe we can do it this fall.
Yeah, I hope it happens again, and I'd like to get you back on the show again sometime.
Okay. Okay.
I just think we're just starting with some of the history.
Yeah, we got more stories.
Well, you've got a lot of history, and before you go, I'm going to read you a few things here that people wanted to say. Some more folks. Tim Ellsbury again said Duff and Lawson were my two favorite mandolin heroes. They have and will always influence my playing, and I think that's right with a lot of people. And Barbara Eldridge says John Duffy was easygoing off stage, especially if he knew you. Was very intimidating to people first time meeting him though.
Yeah.
But he was a big teddy bear and great guy. And yeah, I agree with that. I didn't get to know him good, but he was intimidating the first times I met him because he was, John.
Oh yeah, he scared people.
He was a giant, and also you just never knew. He could say something to you, not even crack a smile, and and it was funny now because I used to see JD could really get to him because they would sit and they knew each other so long they would get backstage and just bash each other back and forth. But,
yeah, isn't that great?
But Duffy usually won most of those, but I've seen Crow hit him with some stuff that made him leave.
Okay.
But anyway, Tom, it's been great having you on the show. We've had a lot of people that like
Phil,
it.
It's my pleasure. It's my pleasure.
And
thanks,
buddy. Look, you take care of yourself, and you're welcome back on here anytime. And
okay.
Thanks again, and tell Barb I said hello. Okay.
Barb, Phil says hello. Hey.
Hello.
She's been listening in.
Yeah, we're sitting on the couch together.
There you go. Oh, you
Okay.
guys have a good night, and thanks again, okay?
Thank you, Phil. Okay, good night.
See you, buddy. Good night. All right. There we go. That was our old buddy Tom Gray, and I'll tell you what, he's one fine fella, and it was good to have him on tonight, and all you guys that have tuned in. And I also told you at the end of the show I'd tell you who we were going to have next week. And there's people pronounce this guy's name two different ways, but I'm gonna tell you how to pronounce it. Some people call him Herb Pedersen. Some people call him Herb Peterson. His name is Herb Peterson, even though it has a D in it. And Herb is a man. He's really one of the music giants. A lot of you folks may remember him from the Desert Rose Band. He played there with those folks, those guys, Chris Hillman and all that bunch. He's done a lot with Chris Hillman, Graham Parsons, John Prine. Let me think. The new Kentucky Colonels, which was Clarence White, was in that band, and the new Kentucky Colonels. I made myself a little note there. I messed it up. Clarence was in the Kentucky Colonels, so I'm thinking. I do know he's played with John Fogerty, did stuff with him, and let's see, I made myself a couple other notes here. The Dillards, Earl Scruggs, David Grisman, and as I mentioned, John Prine. So it'll be good to have Herb Peterson on next week. He lives out in California, and man, he's a music icon. He's one of my favorites. So we'll visit a lot next week with him. I want to thank you guys for tuning in this week and all the kind words that you say, and if you could send up some prayers for me and my family, everyone here. Been a lot of people sick and stuff, and if you would do that, I would appreciate it. Just a big, a big old family prayer for everybody, because we do have a lot of people sick right now with this. So anyway, I'll go over here real quick before I say anything else. Then I'm gonna sign off. Mike Kelly is my buddy from so far back, and Mike's wrote several times. Said that would be another awesome show with Herb, and Mike's the bluegrass DJ here, but he does gospel mornings on a station called Merle FM, and Mike's just one of my best buddies. If we were on a boat sinking, Mike would be the one I would pull into my raft with me if he was out there. I'd push him back out though after I got his wallet. But no, Mike's my buddy. Love Mike Kelly. Zeke Button's cool. Herb Peterson. Oh, wait a minute. Yep, the tune we talked about tonight. Wait a minute. That's Herb Peterson. So we'll have to get that. And Travis Castine, the King's English isn't a friend to you, Phil. Well, probably not. Probably not. Tim Ellsbury, wait a minute, Herb. And Lynn Lawson said it was a great show tonight. And we've just had a lot of people on tonight listening. So be sure to tell your friends about what we're doing here. And right now, especially during the COVID, it's a good place to hang out and listen to stories and stuff of people. Like I mentioned earlier in the interview, the first time I heard the voices, not singing, but talking voices of Ben Aldridge and John Duffy and all those guys. You hear them sing, but you wonder sometimes what their talking voice is like. And that's what I like to do with this show, is you get to hear people that you've heard singing, but you get to hear their talking voice and get to hear them as a human being, as a person, more than just what you hear on the show. So anyway, or on the shows that you see them play, I mean, and singing, it's good to to hear what they sound like, and you can definitely hear that here. I was trying to do two things at once, but thanks again for tuning in. Mike Kelly, love you too, buddy. And anyway, like I said, send us some prayers for all my family, and I hope that if you have friends that are in the same situation, needing some prayer, illness or whatever may be going on, a lot of illness right now, be sure and send up some prayers for them. They will profit from it. I guarantee it. I've seen it so many times with things that just wasn't going right, and all of a sudden, you send up some prayers, and that's the amazing thing with Facebook. And I'll be off here in just a second, but with Facebook, when I first got cancer 10 years ago, 10 years ago this month, I immediately went to Facebook and told people about it, and people asked, why'd you do that? We should kind of be private about that. And I had at the time, well, I guess I had about the same amount of friends that I have now, because Facebook limits you. But I told these people, I want as many people as I can praying for me and my family when I first got cancer. I thought that was important. If I didn't tell anybody, I could have a few people praying for me, and that's always good, because God says where there's two that be that and I just thought, two's really good, but three's good, four's good. But if I could get a few thousand people praying at the same time, or just over a few days, that and I know God hears all your prayers, but I just thought, having so many people at once, and I felt like that is what helped me through every time, because I would get on there and I would ask for prayers, and I would get better. But as time went, I got worse, because I got used to, well, hey, I'm gonna be better. Everything's gonna work out with stuff, and I quit asking. And when I did, it seemed like things started getting medically kind of bending the wrong way again. And then I would ask for prayers, and they would start getting better again. And I learned then that there's no time to slack with that. You can't do that when you're feeling bad and something's going on, and once it's done, you forget about it. You always have to keep that going. Not don't make prayers only when things are bad. Make them when things are good, because you pray for people who are ill, pray for people that's sick. But when things are good, say some prayers, for yourself, that God's let you be healthy, or let things be good, that you have whatever you need, and your family's in good shape. Pray about the good things too. It ain't always about the bad, and I think that's I think that's the key to what I learned. Always prayers, the big thing, and that's what I like about the people that comes over to my show. Is I Misty, always praying for y'all, and Misty's a good one. Uh, she was my sister's daughter, and we lost my sister and her husband in just like a year between both of them. And Misty has jumped in and taken over and doing a great job raising the kids. She sure has. But thanks again, and I'll get out of here. And next week, Herb Peterson, and I'm going to end. And I will say before I go, anything you miss, you can watch these videos tonight. We'll be on probably in an hour, but you can go from tonight all the way back to my first one, and you can watch every one of them on YouTube. So just go to Phil Ledbetter channel, and you can watch every one we do. They're always there. So thank you so much. God bless you. Have a great night.